The 49ers are poised to be full squad on Sunday with the return of Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall, and it couldn't come at a better time as they face division foe Arizona Cardinals, who will be without a lot of their usual starters on offense. This is a huge opportunity for the 49ers to turn their luck around. The question is, will they do it? We'll discuss some matchups the 49ers will need to take advantage of on today's 49K Pod.
You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. We're here with another Friday. It's Friday, November 14th, which means we got another preview episode today, which means I'm back with KP and Desi. Hello to both of you. Thanks for joining me, as always, on a Friday. Good to have you guys. KP, you're muted. Lock in, man. Lock in.
This is what happens when you go to bed at 9:30 at night.
Oh, man. I thought we were supposed to be refreshed, with all the sleep we're getting. But no, thanks to you guys for being on. Desi, is always, we'll start off with the injuries and, we have questions, things to discuss. So we'll start off with that. You may notice the game status report for Sunday's game is very short, and we're very happy about that. The only player on this list, yes, the only player, just one, cornerback Deommodore Lenoir with a calf injury. So that's the good news, that there's only one player. The bad news is that this injury happened in practice. If for the second week in a row, the 49ers have a player, at least one player, get injured on Thursday's practice. This week, it was Deommodore Lenoir with a calf injury. He's questionable. Kyle Shanahan said they're going to do an MRI just to make sure it isn't anything more, but he's dealing with some tightness with this calf. And so last Thursday, Desi, we had 3 guys get hurt in a single practice. And I just want to get your thoughts really quickly before we get into the Brock Purdy, before we get into the Ricky Pearsall stuff. What could possibly be happening in these practices for players to get hurt? Like, this is kind of unheard of. And now it's happened 2 weeks in a row for the 49ers.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to know without being there, of course, but this is a concern. There are some red flags that are kind of going up, injuring, especially at practice, is just, like you said, it's unheard of even for us, right? I don't know that I've even seen this happen with us as consistently as it has this year. But, you look at the staff, of course, you look at what is the warm-up like? Are we doing the proper warm-ups? Is this something that's on the individual? Is this something that's on the team collectively? Is this on the training staff? There's lots of questions here. Are they going a little too intense? I think there was a comment by maybe Kyle Shanahan where he was like, we kind of have a tough practice. And so, but you should still be able to optimize these athletes to help prevent soft tissue injury. I mean, but again, without seeing the injury, it's hard to, extrapolate what exactly the cause is. But it is very concerning. And I would hope that the organization is looking at it and trying to learn and understand what is the root cause of this.
Yeah, because I feel like there's now a small, maybe not so small anymore, underlying themes that we're noticing this season when it comes to injuries, and this has now become one of them. Hopefully it doesn't become a weekly thing going forward for the 49ers. But let's get to the good news, Desi. I mean, we got Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall coming back for this Week 11 matchup, the 49ers, and we have all been patient to have both of these guys back in the lineup. And so what can you tell us about maybe the expectations that we should have for both of these guys? Could we expect that they'll be pretty close to 100% in this game?
So if we think about what was said when Ricky Pearsall's injury initially happened, a grade 1 PCL, I would expect him to be fully optimized, fully ready to go at 6 weeks of rest and rehab and all the things. Brock Purdy, again, I think they were very thoughtful, as they should be, with making sure that he is 100%. And from all of the reports, it sounds like these two individuals are ready to go. So I would expect to see a return of some impressive things on the offense with both those players back.
Yep. And Alfred Collins is expected to be back as well after missing last week's game with the hip injury. But like Desi, also, I think with Purdy, like the biggest thing is that he won't have that metal plate. I mean, I don't know if that did contribute to him looking kind of wonky with, his not planting his foot in that week 4 game against the Jags. But I feel like it's a really good sign he's not going to have anything possibly obstructing his toe at all in this game.
No, the videos that I saw, he looked pretty sharp, pretty much more relaxed and comfortable. I saw a little bit more movement through the foot. So I think they played it smart with him, and I would hope that he comes back and hopefully he can be protected is the key. But another thought that I had when you were talking about the injuries for practice, we're in a situation too where we had so many injuries, and the training staff, as I understand, and I don't know if every organization is the same, but on my show, Girlfriends in Football, I did have Dr. Ree, who was a chiropractor for the Tampa Bay Bucks, on the show. And we were talking about training and what the organization was set up like. He made a comment, I don't think it was on the show, but maybe, off camera, he had talked about like an incident of like him trying to do adjustments on like all the players getting ready for the game right before the game and how limited space he had. And he's sitting there just trying to like do the adjustment. And you're thinking, really, you have one chiropractor for a roster of 53 athletes? So one thing I even brought up earlier this week on my show was, do we need to go back and look at how we structure the training staff and have more people, and maybe you separate by position? You have one provider or one physical therapist, one athletic trainer for the offensive line. You have one for the defensive line. You have one, et cetera, et cetera. Do we need to look at that? And especially with as depleted as our players have been, that means the training staff has to focus on those players. And so as you pull attention to more injured players, you're separating and not having not as watchful of an eye on the people that are actually on the field. So I just kind of wonder if that's also playing into some of this too. It's just another thought I had.
Yeah, I would piggyback off that real quick. Just thinking in terms of, this is one of the rare times where there aren't enough cooks in the kitchen, right? To like help everybody out, just because there are a lot of people who need meals in terms of like analogy for injuries and stuff. So yeah, I do wonder if maybe there are too many QC coaches. I don't know if like that's exactly where they're where they're looking at, but it's pretty clear in my eyes too. I agree with that, where, hey, maybe there's too many coaches here. Maybe there's too many QC coaches here, when the reality is there needs to be more attention on the medical staff.
I have a thought, maybe the 49ers should hire Desi. I think she has some great ideas. She knows what she's talking about in this department. So I feel like it could do a lot worse.
More money.
Oh man. Well, yeah, Desi, I mean, less injuries to talk about this week, which is a positive. I'm not hoping for any more, but thank you as always for joining us to talk about these injuries on a Friday. Appreciate you.
Of course. Exciting game coming up this Sunday, guys. Let's beat those Cardinals.
Let's do it. Thanks, Desi. All right. Let's take a look, KP, at what the Cardinals are dealing with this week, because they have a slew of injuries. This looks like what the 49ers injury report usually looks like heading into game days. And let's go through the players who are going to be out for them this week. They got their linebacker Baron Browning, guard Hayden Connor, Marvin Harrison, their star wide receiver, cornerback Will Johnson, their star rookie corner, and safety Adrian Taylor Demerson. So some guys who were out there for this week 3 game are not going to be available for the Cardinals in week 11. And just as we rattle off some of the questionables as well, Calvin Beachum, Will Hernandez, their running back Zonovan Knight or Bam Knight, defensive tackle Walter Nolan, linebacker BJ Ojulari, defensive tackle Darius Robinson. I mean, this is a lot. And I feel like if there's any opportunity for the 49ers to seize, with the whole injury thing, it would be this game, right? I mean, I hope that, the 49ers can take advantage of just how the Cardinals are dealing with some injuries as well.
He's not listed on here, but Zay Jones is their wide receiver 3, and he's
That's
already
right.
on the IR because he tore his Achilles. So they're missing over 25% of their receiving production in this game. It's huge. And I think on the other side of the ball, right, Will Johnson and the safety, Taylor Demerson here, like those are two guys who probably would have contributed too. So it does set up for a pretty favorable matchup on both sides of the ball with these injuries. But obviously we'll get there. They did not play Nolan the first time.
That's true. That is true. And then Nolan's questionable, so he has a chance to be available for this game. And he's pretty good. He's pretty good. I mean, he looked good in the game action he had last week against Seattle, already creating disruption in the middle, just as you would expect. I mean, it's the same things we saw in his tape. Kyle Shanahan, did admit, and not surprisingly so, that he was an option for them at pick 10. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. That's an important matchup for sure. Let's take a look first, though, at the Cardinals offense. I mean, some familiar faces that we obviously know of, Trey McBride, but there's a lot of guys that are going to be different this time around from that week three game. So you obviously don't have Kyler Murray. He hasn't played for several weeks now. Jacoby Brissett has taken over. And, I would say like he's operated this offense at a more efficient level than Kyler Murray has. He's, gotten the most out of the passing game that we've seen from this Cardinals offense in some time. He's targeting Trey McBride quite a lot. I mean, Marvin Harrison got going with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. So, I think for them, they probably welcomed this change. And you can even argue it was maybe even a soft benching for Kyler Murray. And so Jacoby Brissett going to be the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. The difference with their running back situation, they have Bam Knight and they have DeMarcado, and they're kind of doing a 50-50 split. We'll see if Bam Knight does play. Again, he is questionable. But as we mentioned, they're missing some power in the wide receiver room. So you have Michael Wilson, who's probably going to get more targets this week as Greg Dortch, their slot receiver. And then you have Xavier Weaver, who's going to be the other outside guy. So, yeah, I mean, looking at just all the injuries and how it could impact them, I would say like they've done a decent job of adjusting to some of the injuries they've already faced on the offensive side of the ball. And like I said, Brissett is still, passing the ball and moving the ball efficiently in his own way. So I think, we see a lot from Trey McBride. We'll see a lot more for guys like Michael Wilson, and Wilson's like pretty good as well. So, we'll see how they move the ball with this group. The 49ers definitely can't overlook this offense just because they're missing a couple of receivers. I mean, just some weeks ago, Texans didn't have Nico Collins or who's their second wide receiver? They're missing him too as well. Previously the Jags.
I forgot who it was, but I think the difference here is like Jalen Noel was the guy to get a big play on them. That's not really Greg Dortch's game. I think the difference is just athleticism and speed, right? When you miss Harrison, obviously, Brissett, if you've been watching him the last couple of weeks, he will drop back and just stare down Marvin Harrison. Like he's not really looking to target anybody else. So not having him is quite the drop off. I think the 49ers have an opportunity to make them make Arizona one-dimensional here. I think the 49ers defense, they've been better than expected, I think, against the run without Fred Warner. A lot of that goes to Tatum Bethune. So with that in mind, having the opportunity to make them one-dimensional, make them, hey, like Trey McBride's not going to beat us. You have to like your odds, even if Lenore doesn't play. I think Luter matches up pretty well with all these wide receivers, and the same goes with Green and even Dortch on Upton Stout, because that's probably where the Cardinals are going to want to get over on them, just, getting a rookie involved in the passing game. So I like the matchup across the board for the 49ers. I really don't think this is an offense, and obviously the injuries help, that can get over on the Niners. But if that guy on the screen, if he does get involved, if he does overly targeted, which, should be the plan, it will be a problem.
And that guy on the screen is Trey McBride, who the 49ers need to focus the entire defense on, basically, in order to kind of make Cardinals one-dimensional, force Brissett to look elsewhere, and then maybe opportunities come that way. But in week 3, the 49ers did a pretty decent job defending against Trey McBride, but it was also a completely different defense, to be fair. McBride had 4 catches for only 34 yards. He did have a touchdown, but yes, you did have Fred Warner in there, and that makes a world of a difference, as we know now. Experiencing life without Fred Warner has not been great. And this season, McBride's been on a tear, right? He's one of the best tight ends in all of football. 83 targets and 61 receptions, both lead among tight ends in the NFL. And he's second among tight ends in receiving yards with 603 and 6 touchdowns. And in the last 11 games, he's had 5 or more receptions. So, that's pretty big as well. So here's the thing. You mentioned the slot, right? And you mentioned Greg Dortch in the slot, which he's going to have some time there as well. But I do expect that the Cardinals are going to look at a particular matchup in the slot and try to get Trey McBride there. He ranks second among tight ends in receiving yards from the slot, has a lot of success there. The 49ers, on the other hand, we talked about this last week as well, right? With Upton Stout, he's going to be targeted. He's going to be picked on. They rank 30th in receiving yards allowed to slot receivers this season. So I think if the Cardinals are smart, which, that stands to be debated, but, if they are smart, I would try to get Trey McBride in the slot and just see what would happen, right? And I think they'd probably like that matchup 10 times out of 10. And so that's something for the 49ers to look out for. But, there are ways the 49ers could combat that as well, and just having maybe some help wherever Trey McBride is lined up. How could the 49ers, combat this, though, if the Cardinals do try to get McBride lined up against Upton Stout?
So they tried to actually last game in week 3, and they were able to get a big play, but that was on Marcus Siegel, and he's not in the lineup. And that's not to say, whether it's Malik Mustafa or Jair Brown won't do that, but the guy who did give up a big play is no longer playing. So I would imagine I would imagine Salah does what he did against Marvin Harrison in week 3, where even when he was in the slot, there were a couple opportunities, there were a couple plays where they doubled him, and they would just leave one of the safeties and basically dare the quarterback to throw it to anybody else, and it didn't work. So I would assume they do a lot of that, especially when McBride flexes out, because that's just the one guy you can't let get over on you. And he got them on a couple plays last time, but overall, I thought the 49ers did a really good job at limiting McBride, which is not easy. He's a very good athlete. He's very tough to defend. So, again, not having Harrison does make that a lot easier, just because you can focus more eyeballs on McBride. So, yeah, I would think we see more than even 4 or 5 double teams against McBride.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good strategy for the 49ers to do. So, yeah, that's one of the areas to be cautious of McBride in the slot. And then also, obviously, in the red zone, he's a big target for them there. He ranks 6th among tight ends in red zone target rate. And the 49ers rank 29th in red zone touchdown rate allowed. So that's something that they'll need to be wary of. And if you're going to focus on Trey McBride, definitely want to do that in the red zone, especially. So something to be mindful of.
He did get D Winters last time in the red zone. That's something. It seems like the safeties just get picked off or in kind of just in a bad position down in the red zone. And the Cardinals do a good job of moving the ball between the 20s. And obviously he's going to be their lone option in the red zone. So that's the only caution I would say is him.
What are your thoughts on D Winters? As you mentioned him, like, the last few weeks haven't been too kind to Winters, and he is going through injury right now. I know he's not on like the injury report for this week or anything, but he's been dealing with knee injuries for the last few weeks. I don't know if that's something that's impacting him, or would you say that it's more so just not having the Batman to his Robin? You don't have Fred Warner out there. Is that kind of hurting D Winters' game a bit?
Honestly, I don't really see much change in his game. I think the way that the defense plays, they funnel things through Winters, just through the middle in general, even when Warner was there. And Saleh is comfortable giving with Warner, with Winters, whoever it is, giving up catches or just being the focus of the defense, as opposed to losing on the outside. And I think it's just you put your defense in a much better situation when that's the case. When I'm even rewatching these games during the week, I never come away thinking, damn, like Winters really had a bad game. That wasn't the case last week. That hasn't been the case, honestly, either of the previous 4 or 5 games. So it might look bad on the stat sheet because he's given up 5, 6, 7, but that's as opposed to Lenore one-on-one giving up 20, 19. So like there's a big difference there. So I really don't watch them and think, oh man, he's really costing them. They ask him to do a lot. They run a bunch of different fronts and he has to go on the line of scrimmage. So he's doing things that he's never really done. And when that's the case, the results are going to vary. So he's also playing next to a 7th round rookie who has to basically he has to get him lined up. He's even coming off the field now. It's weird. So Winters came off the field a couple of times last week, and they put Jason Pinnock just to get more speed on the field, and they're probably going to blitz Bethune. So there's just a lot going on. They're trying to just get the right personnel on the field. But when I watch the 49ers defense, I never look at it like, wow, Winters is really costing them. Honestly, I look at it the opposite, where he's getting them in the right spots. He's in position. I trust him against a guy like Trey McBride, even if he does give up 3, 4, however many catches it may be. I know it's not going to lead to a big play. So I actually think he's trending very well.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's great context and it makes sense, just given that
his job sucks, honestly.
Yeah, like it seems like it's just par for the course, right? Like he's going to get heavily targeted, just based off of how the 49ers defense kind of structured. So, it's going to be tough for optics, but the context is good. Before we move on to the Cardinals defense. Great question from Tony here. Do you think the Cardinals will copy what Houston and the Rams did and go big personnel, 6 offensive linemen or 13 to expose the 49ers' thin defensive line? Now, the Rams were already doing some of the 13 personnel before facing the 49ers, but maybe just given the matchup, they especially liked it, So I don't know if that's something the Cardinals have ever really done much of, but could you see them maybe doing more of that?
I mean, 13 personnel works when you have like Puka and Devontae Adams winning one-on-one on the outside, or you have Ferguson who can run by Luke Gifford, which isn't a tall task, but when you have somebody who can actually run, it works a lot. I don't think we're going to run into a scenario where it's Gifford one-on-one against a tight end 3 who's athletic, because that's just not what the Cardinals have. They usually have it where Winters is going to be lined up or a safety is going to be lined up on the tight end 1. And honestly, there was just a couple plays, and credit to Houston and Los Angeles, where they just out-schemed the 49ers, where it ended up being Noel on Mustafa. It ended up being, like I said, Ferguson on Gifford. So like they got them in some bad situations, but personnel-wise, I don't really think the Cardinals have that matchup. I would assume so, though, based on the injuries, right? Harrison's not going to be out, so maybe they do try to get the 49ers in base. And statistically, they are significantly worse when Gifford's on the field as opposed to Stout. As much, flack Stout has taken this year. I know he's going through some rookie growing pains, but I think he's a very good player, and they are just much better when he is on the field. So I would assume so. That doesn't mean it's going to work out in the same way it did, just because, again, the Rams and the Texans were able to get over on a couple explosive plays, and it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's true. For Stout, I mean, I think he's also gotten the short end of the stick as well, where, there's a lot of attention towards him. And
there was a 3rd and 2 play last week. Perfect position. Puka just runs into him, and because he's bigger than him, there's a separation, and that's how he gets open and gets the catch. There's there's no coaching points for that. He's just bigger than him.
Yeah. And the 49ers, really like Stout, and, I think it's for good reason. I think he is going to be a really good player, and he's already shown a lot of great things, especially in as a blitzer in run support as well. So yeah, there are going to be times where there will be growing pains in coverage, but he'll work through those, I'm sure. And let's not forget, they do have another option behind him in Chase Lucas, and they're still electing to go with Upton Stout. I think that tells you how they feel about him and what he brings to the table. So, all right, let's take a look at the Cardinals defense now. So, as mentioned, Baron Browning going to be out for this game. KP, do you know who would maybe be in his place on the edge there?
I don't off the top of my head. Obviously I know it's Sweat on the other side, but
yeah, they had enough.
Robinson kicks out and they bring in like Nolan. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, they haven't updated the lineups on PFF yet, so wasn't able to see that, but that's a possibility. Darius Robinson also questionable for this game, so we'll see. But also Walter Nolan is, so yeah, there's some things going on there. But I think this line is headlined mostly by Josh Sweat, Calais Campbell. I mean, those are your I mean that's the best part of your line right there. And as far as the corners, you got Bo Melton, Garrett Williams, and on linebacker, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and then Cody Simon, and then Budda Baker, Kittle's favorite, and then other safety, Jalen Thompson. So a decent group. I think I'm most concerned with the defensive line of this group, just because I
think it's Jordan Barch now that I think about the Ducks, the guy from Oregon. I think he might be the backup for what it's worth.
Okay, I wouldn't hate that matchup for the 49ers, honestly. But, yeah, I think the Cardinals' defensive line does have, some firepower there with both Sweat and you also have Campbell on the same side. And, there's talent there. They're one of just two teams this season, aside from the Seahawks, who have 3 players with a pressure rate of 14% or more this season. Josh Sweat ranks 10th in edge pass rush win rate, and Calais Campbell ranks 6th among defensive tackles. They will be going up against Trent Williams and Ben Barch, respectively. So the 49ers seem to have made the decision of rolling with Ben Barch at left guard after starting Spencer Burford last week, but they went back to Barch as that game went on. Do you think that continues this week? And how do you feel about them doing that? Them feeling like Ben Barch is the better option over Burford?
Yeah, they had an interesting rotation last week. So Burford got the first 2 series, maybe the first 3 series. Then Barch came in, and then Barch started the second half, but Burford finished the game. It was really bizarre how they did it. I don't know if it was planned like that, if they were just trying to ride the hot hand. For what it's worth, they both looked okay. They both looked fine. I don't think either had multiple negative plays. I don't know if that was to protect him from not getting hurt, because he's really hasn't shown that he can stay healthy, but it's also to get Burford some work too, because again, there was no real reason to take him off the field based on what he showed against the Giants. I do think it actually continues, just because they did it at right guard for multiple years, so why not try it at left guard, especially if it's a way to ensure that Barch stays healthy. So I think by doing that, if Barch does go down, you still get Burford reps, and then obviously you were confident in Barch to start to begin with. So I don't really see it as a negative to rotate the left guards. We didn't mention it. I know we're talking about the D-line, but Mac Wilson's also out. He was out. I think he missed last week was the first game he missed, and the score got out of hand, but I think it played a part with the Cardinals having to put in another linebacker who's not used to covering, and that kind of showed too. So it's another loss there for the on the depth chart. They lost their quote unquote Fred Warner, their Mike. So tying it back into this defensive line, though, I just worry about Colton McKivitz when he's one-on-one. We see it so often when all it takes is that one time where he's one-on-one and there's not a tight end or there's not a running back, and it just tends to bite them in the butt. So I would be worried about Sweat. Browning not playing, though, is a big deal, just because, again, you could focus more eyes on that one player.
Yeah, and, Walter Nolan will get mixed in as well, assuming he plays. Are you worried about just the disruption he could create on the interior as well.
Nolan?
Yeah.
Oh, I was very pro Nolan pre-draft. I actually thought they should have taken him. I understand why they didn't, just because, a whole age difference. You're getting a second contract with Michael. But, I mean, if you watch him, especially against that Cowboys game, he was all over the place. He flashed a couple times last week. That is the type of player, though, that gives the 49ers interior offensive line issues, just the violent, physical, athletic type who just flies off the ball. So I would definitely be worried about that. But, I mean, the back end is where they have such an advantage, where the last 2 weeks, right, we're talking about the Giants defensive line. We're talking about the Rams defensive line. And Mac was only pressured on 23% of his dropbacks last week. So it was a season low, I believe. So I think you can scheme around a lot of this stuff, and it really comes down to the perimeter. So will they make their play? I'm sure they'll have a couple plays here and there, but over the course of the game, I think the 49ers, the passing offense specifically, will be able to get over on them.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, I mean, I think, Purdy being back, maybe they're able to do a little bit more. Purdy can escape the pocket a little bit better than Mac Jones. So yeah, maybe that's something we see more of in this game. Before we move on to the favorable matchups for the 49ers, I want to remind you guys of, let's see here. Where's my slides? Here we go. So want to take your 49ers fit from solid to legendary. Check out SF Gold Rush gear. Jewelry made from the faithful for the faithful, from gold chains to red and gold accents. You'll look game day ready every week. Use the code 49K for 20% off your entire order at sfgoldrushgear.com. That is sfgoldrushgear.com. Every fan deserves to shine like the 49ers. What can the 49ers do to shine this week? Well, I think, having Ricky Pearsall back definitely helps. I think the fact that, Purdy and Pearsall have good chemistry as well, both of those guys coming back at the same time, there's an opportunity for this offense to, step a little more on the gas pedal this week. Pearsall has averaged 79.2 yards in his last 5 games played, and he still ranks 5th in average depth of target with 15.9, which kind of reminds me of the quote that we got from John Lynch when he was asked about Ricky Pearsall yesterday on KNBR. He noted that Ricky gives the team something different. He gives them explosiveness at the receiver position. He gives them some speed, the ability to get down the field with his precise route running. I definitely think that's something that the 49ers have been missing, and something that we're looking forward to seeing back on the field again. It'll just help diversify what the 49ers are doing in the passing game.
They just can't win down the field. Like, we've seen schemed open passes, but whenever it's one-on-one, for whatever reason, they just can't. This player can. I'm pretty sure he's 17th in most receiving or most receptions over 20 yards. Like, before he got hurt, he was 2, and he's still in like the top 20 after all these weeks, after missing 6 games. That's just insane. I mean, I think it just kind of tells you how routinely he was winning down the field. And there were a couple other, I can think of 2-3 other occasions where like he was open down the field, and for whatever reason, like they just couldn't connect with him. So the way that Ricky was able to win down the field, how often he was able to do it, just makes life easier for everybody else. And they really weren't able to, once he really got going, like George Kittle was already out. So having Kittle on the intermediate level, having McCaffrey underneath, having those secondary options where Jennings and Bourne can come into play now, as opposed to being like your top dog, like the trickle effect for Ricky Pearsall is huge. I think being able to, just for Mac Jones, I know he's not there, but the way that they were able to like build a little rapport with Jennings and with Bourne, now that Pearsall's back, with Kittle in the fold, with McCaffrey as the guy who's still going to get like 10 targets a game, probably. I think it just goes a long way. I think the schedule really allows the offense to kind of build some confidence over this next month. I think it's going to start with a secondary that really doesn't stop anybody. So, yeah, this is going to be a really big game. I know he had 100 yards last time. Shanahan says he's going to ease him back in. He's not going to put a lot on his play. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it.
Yeah, right.
With that.
I feel like he always says that, and then the player
First
ends
pass
up
of the
getting
game, it
like
goes to him.
all snaps.
Yeah. He's
It's
not
classic.
coming out of the game. I refuse to believe that. Shanahan's like, we're going to see like with his conditioning and whatnot. You throw him the ball, he gets 20 yards. You're going to throw it to him multiple times after that. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, because that's just been his game with the 49ers, right? Just the ability to give them chunk yardage. And, looking at the 4 games that he played in, this season, 6 targets, 4 receptions, 108 yards. Week 2, 6 targets, 4 receptions, 56 yards. 11 targets in week 3, 8 receptions, 117 yards. And then in week 4, the game in which he got hurt, he didn't finish. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 46 yards. And so, this is going to be a welcomed change, I think, for the 49ers, where now you have your full stable of passing options or receiving options in this offense. Now it should really transform how this offense looks. I feel like it's going to be way more complementary as a whole. And, Kyle Shanahan talked about it a little bit, in his presser earlier today. Is just like, yeah, like looking forward to just getting back to doing what we do and being aggressive, and that's just the one thing that, maybe was missing from the time that Mac Jones started. He played admirably, but there were some times where, maybe he was taking the safer route, the safer option, check down, rather than, going downfield, even when he did have the opportunities. We know Purdy will be aggressive with the football, and having Pearsall back will help that.
Yeah, I don't think people – so there was a question about, whether Brock's being underrated because he's missed so much time. I think Pearsall is the guy who they need to focus on who's being underrated. So I used to look like every week. He was basically neck and neck with Jackson Smith-Njigba in the type of season he was having before he was hurt. Like he was legitimately one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL across like any metric that matters. So to get that type of player back in the fold is just ginormous. And you mentioned – we know Purdy is going to throw it down the field. What he does, like on third downs or on obvious passing downs compared to Mac, like just completely different. Let's say there are 3 levels to a route, right? We know Mac's probably going to check it down to McCaffrey. Not a bad idea, right? But there is a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that Purdy's going to push the ball down the field and do so, almost going out of his way to do so to keep the offense on the field. So even when there are negative plays, I think a guy like Pearsall on the field is going to take this a long way. And again, having Purdy back is very, very favorable for this offense as well.
Yeah, and it's going to allow them, like I said, to be more complimentary. And I think that goes with Christian McCaffrey as well, getting maybe less involvement in the passing game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I think it could maybe mean that he gets going in the run game. And so I do think Christian McCaffrey has an opportunity to have a good game this week as well. If you look at McCaffrey's game in week 3, not a whole lot, from the running game standpoint, but the 49ers run game was pretty stagnant still at that point in week 3, 17 carries, 52 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. He had 14 targets in that game though, 10 catches, 88 receiving yards. He was basically like their leading receiver. But now that you have other options available, you don't have to depend on Christian McCaffrey to be like your main wide receiver. He'll still be an option for Purdy if he wants to take that route. But, I think also if you look at some of the recent success that running backs have had on the ground against this Arizona team, I think it presents an opportunity for the 49ers, who have steadily, I think, been getting a little bit better on the ground as of late, to have a pretty good game. I mean, last week against Seattle, and yes, this is probably somewhat skewed by just the game script and Seattle going way up in that game early. They ended up with 35 carries, 181 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. But even if you look at, just what the Cardinals have conceded to other running backs this season, like Javonte Williams in week 9 had 83 rushing yards. Then in week 7 to the Packers, they gave up 72 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns to Josh Jacobs. The week prior, week 6, to Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries, 123 yards and a touchdown. So if the 49ers decide that they want to run block, which we know what can happen, right? If McCaffrey has his lanes, good things happen. And they've also been involving Brian Robinson lately too, which has been a nice change of pace as well, especially on the short yardage red zone situations. So I think the run game has an opportunity to look good in this game against Arizona.
Yeah, and that's probably another trickle down effect from Pearsall. You have to actually respect the downfield passing, so you can't hug everybody up near the line of scrimmage. I'm going to make a bold prediction here and say McCaffrey has his longest run of the season in this game. I do think there
not a high bar.
It's not. Just get into the 20s. I will say that there is a 20-yard run, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's Robinson,
I like it.
This game, because there are opportunities, and not having that Mac Wilson in the middle will go a long way. Maybe not having Browning will lead to that Birch player we were talking about who did play last week. Maybe they view him as a pass rush only player, so they can take advantage in that sense. You hit it on the head. I think that the running game, they're coming along, right? They're trending in the right direction. They're getting closer and closer. We're starting to see more and more double-digit 15-plus runs. So I think this is the week where they finally get over that hump of 20 yards, and we see a breakaway run. Maybe it's only 22 yards, but beggars cannot be choosers at this point, right? But yeah, I think the offensive line deserves a lot of credit as well, because a lot of times, when there's that one sack, that's all you harp on, that's all you want to talk about. But honestly, for 2 weeks running now, I thought the offensive line, they've done a really good job of controlling the line of scrimmage. Again, there's a fourth down last week where you're going to mention, or you're going to think about, hey, they didn't get on that down, but for the most part, I think there have been holes. And I would go to say that on one carry specifically that stands out in my mind, I thought Brian Robinson ran. I think he got 3 on the play. I think if McCaffrey was in there, he probably would have got 7, like he would have broke it. So they're there. They're close. It's going to hit. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And I think the combinations that they have right now with Colby no longer in there, it just makes it a lot easier for them to have success on the ground, especially now that they got the tight end back in George Kittle. He makes a big difference. And I will add, taking Kendrick Bourne off the field on run plays will also allow them, because he has been a net negative as far as just run blocking goes. And Pearsall is not the biggest guy, but the effort is just night and day between those two as blockers. So I think Pearsall is going to help him out on the ground as well.
That's important, especially on like runs to the outside. You also mentioned like Browning, being out in this game. That could help spring one to the outside, because they haven't really had outside runs, which might be part of the reason maybe why they're, been capped at under 20 on these runs so far. And so if they can get one to the outside, that could, and they block correctly, I think maybe we see a big run in this one. All great points from you. And I'll also mention this guy. I mean, and this one's obvious. It's just like, this is your big 3, and it has to be Kittle, McCaffrey, and Pearsall. That's your big 3 on this offense, and you have them all healthy at the same time in this Week 11 game. So George Kittle needs to be involved, and he was heavily involved last week. 9 receptions, 84 yards, a touchdown. You want to see similar production out of him as well. But now the 49ers will have the luxury of being able to spread the ball around and not necessarily having to depend on just George Kittle or just, McCaffrey, right? So I think, Kittle is poised to stay involved in this offense. And I mean, you have to. I was saying it earlier in the week. I said it yesterday too, that when George Kittle gets the ball, he rewards you for that. Like, just full effort. His touchdown was incredible last week. So, I mean, I think this is the type of game where you see maybe if Pearsall is not at 100%, right? Because, it did take Kittle some time to get going to when he first came back. Maybe it'll just create enough for Kittle to be the focal point of the offense this week.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers are just have been low, but I think that's more of a backup quarterback thing as opposed to him not being open or him being off. He made some incredible catches last week. Honestly, you forget how good he is, and then they throw him the ball, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, he's going to the Hall of Fame. So it would be tough to ignore him in the passing game. when you mention Christian McCaffrey in the passing game, I think it's less is more with him when they're healthy, like when they're at their full capacity. And I think it's kind of the opposite with Kittle. I think they should just spam him targets and then work off that, whether it's Pearsall deep and McCaffrey underneath, and just kind of go from there. But I think if this team is really going to roll, it's going to be because Kittle is like the focal point of the offense.
Yeah. I mean, you have all your threats on the field that like that could only lead to good things where, then Kyle can kind of manipulate space the way that he likes to, and he's very good at. All right, KP. So the last thing I want to talk about here, and this one, I had a tough time like saying it's going to be like a cautious matchup or favorable, just because I could see it going either way. So I'm calling it the decider, and it all comes down to pressure. I mean, Jacoby Brissett has been one of the most pressured quarterbacks. He was the most pressured quarterback in week 10 on 50.9% of his dropbacks. In his last 4 starts, he was under pressure for 47.8 of his dropbacks. And since week 6, when he took over as a starter, no quarterback has been pressured at a higher rate than Jacoby Brissett. And in that span, he's taken 18 sacks. Now I know what you're thinking, and you'd be right to think it. The 49ers defense has been awful in creating pressure. In the last 7 games, they rank last in pressure rate and 31st in sack rate, and they haven't had more than 2 sacks in a game since week 2. I know, it's putrid. So that's the thing. Like, which is going to be favored in this game? I don't know. Like, we're really just going to have to see. But if the 49ers could get any sort of pressure going, I think it'll be obviously a good thing for the 49ers. Let me ask you this, KP. Do you think the 49ers resort to blitzing as just a means of trying to get any pressure in this game, just like they did last week?
Man, they were really close. I know you get no credit for being almost, but they were close on a lot of plays last week. And I think the difference just was played an elite quarterback. He's done this before. He's seen so many different defenses that he knew where to go with the ball, and he was able to get it out just in the nick of time. But if you were to simulate what they did last week and put it against Jacoby Brissett, I feel like they would have probably had 3 sacks. There was, again, like a lot of opportunity for them last week. So solid blitz at a season high clip last week. I don't know if he's going to do that again, but the fact that he's willing to do that against a Rams offense with the weapons that they have, and knowing that, we just talked about it's down to Trey McBride, I would assume we see solid, just go down swinging like that. He's never been the type that's going to go down, just playing vanilla. And that's not who he is at his core. So I think we are going to see some pressure, and I think that's going to lead to some turnovers. So Brissett is a much different, just like any quarterback, he's much different when he's under pressure, but I think his eyes drop, and he's no longer interested in throwing the ball down the field, and it's prone to mistakes. And he honestly loses the ball a lot. So if they do get close or they do get home, would not be surprised if the focal point this week is, hey, get after the ball, because, there's plenty of film where Jacoby Brissett does not hang on to the ball. I think it is a good opportunity for a player like Bryce Huff, a player like Keon White on the inside. So besides Paris Johnson at left tackle, I don't really think there are any like average to plus starters along the offensive line. So it is like bad versus worse for sure. But it's tough to say, like, there's no real evidence to suggest that the Cardinals would be able to block anybody, because they haven't. So why would that change? Even against a team, the defensive line, that really hasn't shown the ability to get after the passer. But if you're looking from a statistical standpoint, right, if you're looking at the probability, the pressure rates and stuff, I do think the 49ers are better or closer than what they've shown.
Because it's kind of similar to that game some weeks ago against the Texans, where the Texans had an awful offensive line too. And yet, the 49ers just weren't able to get home.
Sure.
Stroud was getting the ball out quickly in some moments, but other times it felt like he can cook an egg, back there. So you want to avoid a situation like that this week. Hopefully the 49ers could get some pressure going. I do expect, we'll see some blitzes as well. And I do expect that the blitzes will be more successful against Jacoby Brissett than Matthew Stafford. So we'll see. But I do think this could help, swing the game potentially for the 49ers. Now, we have this question in the chat from Strawberry Reacts, with Pearsall active, does that mean Watkins goes back to being inactive? Yeah, interesting question. Like, who would you say is the odd man out now of this group? Like, there's also Demarcus Robinson, Sky Moore, Watkins, Bourne. Like, I mean, I don't think you would make Bourne inactive. So, of the other names I mentioned, who would you have inactive?
Yeah, it really might be the rookie Jordan Watkins, just because there's no real role for him. So they play Robinson at receiver. Like, he's running routes. Like, he played 29 snaps last week, whereas Watkins just isn't seeing the field. I don't know if he doesn't know the plays, he doesn't like run the routes at the right depth, whatever it may be. The trust isn't there. So when it comes down to a player who, you know, is running actual routes and can be a threat, I'm not saying that Watkins can. He just hasn't proven it in the eyes of the coaching staff. So I would imagine it is Watkins, which does suck because there's so much preseason hype behind him. And when you watch the 49ers offense, you would think a player like that can really help them because he can run. But when they did throw him the ball, it wasn't the worst outcomes either. So it is a little strange, but at the same time, I think, you know, just veteran, rookie, and how big of a role will Watkins or Robinson truly play with Pearsall back in the fold. So like from a, you know, prisoner of the moments point of view, it might seem like it sucks, but macro, I don't really think it matters. I think it's going to be indifferent.
All right, KP, let's get into our score prediction. I forgot to get your score prediction last week, but I mean, we would have probably both said the 49ers lose that game. So this week, what do you have?
I think the 49ers are going to bounce back offensively. And to be fair, Mac Jones deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do over the past 2 months, however long it was. So they were scoring at a pretty high clip without anybody to really throw to outside of Kittle and McCaffrey. And I say that, but teams are so focused on those two, and it's not as if Kittle was a primary target getting 10 targets. So, hat tip to Mac Jones. I think he really did a good job of putting this team in a position to make the playoffs. But I think we're also going to see a much different offense now with Brock Purdy back in the fold. So, understanding that Brock Purdy's probably going to play like Brock Purdy, I think it's going to lead to some explosive plays, which means points. I think the defense is probably going to get burned once or twice. But I think overall, the 49ers are going to be able to slow down Jacoby Brissett. I think it's going to look 27-20, where the Cardinals get a late score to make the score look closer than it really was throughout the game. A lot like the Giants game, right? 34-24, but it was never really that close. I think we're going to see a similar game this time.
I think the 49ers get over 30 this week. And maybe that's with my expectation that Brock Purdy does look like himself, right? That there's no rust for Brock Purdy. And maybe he starts off slow, but yeah, not on the injury report. I mean, that's definitely huge. In the clips that I saw, he looked pretty good. So with everyone back, I think it's just going to help them get off to a hot start. And I wouldn't be surprised if to start this game, Kyle Shanahan just calls plays to get him into a rhythm, you know, like maybe just easy, quick strikes, just get him going, get his feet under him. And as the game goes on, he'll get more comfortable. So I think they get over 30. 33-19 is what I'm going with in this one. And I agree. I think there's probably like some garbage time, you know, score by Brissett and the Cardinals in this one as well. But yeah, I think the 49ers are going to look like the good version of themselves again.
Right. Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson go for at least 20 yards on one run. So we see the longest run of the season. And I'll double down on the defense and say we either have multiple turnovers or multiple sacks for the first time in eon.
Wow. See, that's a hot take. That one's really a hot take right there.
I think they can get over on the Cardinals, honestly.
I mean, I would love it if that were true. Yeah, I could see a game where, you know, McCaffrey and Brian Robinson each have a rushing touchdown. Maybe it could be in this one. Not as hot a take as yours, but, you know, that's what I'm willing to throw in the ring right now. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us for our preview show today. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. I'll be back on Sunday for the post-game show. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Peace.